The flames roared, consuming everything in sight. Smoke thickened the air, making it impossible to breathe. Inside the burning house, an elderly man struggled to move, coughing violently. He was trapped and running out of time. Outside, firefighters rushed into action, and leading them, Jake Carter, a man determined to save lives even when one of those lives belonged to a man who had never shown him kindness. Fairview looked like any ordinary town. Peaceful, quiet, a place where families had lived for generations. But beneath the surface, an invisible line divided the community. Jake Carter, one of the town's only black firefighters, had spent his life proving himself. He had worked twice as hard, fought twice as long to be seen as an equal. Yet no matter how many fires he put out, no matter how many lives he saved, there were still those who refused to respect him. One of those people was Richard Dawson, owner of Dawson's Hardware, a man set in his ways. He never said much, but his actions spoke louder than words. When Jake walked into his store one afternoon, Dawson's cold gaze followed him. He barely acknowledged him, barely spoke a word. And when Jake handed over the money, Dawson hesitated, like he didn't want to touch it. He slid the change across the counter instead of handing it over. The message was clear. Jake had seen this before. He didn't react. He just picked up his things and left, the weight of an unspoken war pressing on his shoulders. That night, a storm rolled into town. Lightning cracked across the sky. Rain hammered against rooftops. But inside Dawson's house, something far more dangerous was happening. A fire. It started small, maybe an old heater, maybe a forgotten candle. But within minutes, it spread, devouring everything in its path. Dawson woke up coughing, eyes stinging. The stairs were already engulfed in flames. His phone was out of reach. He was trapped. Panic set in. Was this it? Was this how his life would end? But outside, help had arrived. Firefighters leaped into action, rushing to control the flames. And leading them was Jake. Ignoring the dangers, Jake charged into the burning house. Smoke filled his lungs, heat seared his skin, but he pushed forward. He knew time was running out. Upstairs, Dawson was barely conscious, his vision blurred, his body weak. And then, through the thick smoke, he saw him, Jake Carter, the man he had ignored, dismissed, disrespected, now risking his own life to save him. Jake grabbed Dawson, hoisting him over his shoulder. But just as he turned, a section of the ceiling collapsed, blocking their way out. There was only one option now, the window. Jake kicked it open, the cold night air flooding in. With every ounce of strength, he climbed down the ladder, Dawson in his arms, the flames roaring behind them. The moment their feet hit the ground, the house groaned. And then, with a deafening crash, the roof caved in. He had made it. They had made it. But the real story was just beginning. Dawson woke up in a hospital bed, his body aching, his mind racing. He had been saved by the very man he had spent a lifetime looking down on. For the first time, he felt something new. Guilt, shame, gratitude. A few days later, Dawson did something no one expected. He walked into the fire station. The room fell silent as he approached Jake. "I don't deserve this," he said, voice trembling. "But thank you. You saved my life." Jake looked at him for a long moment before answering. "Saving lives is my job." But Dawson knew words weren't enough. He had to do more. Days later, he stood before the town, microphone in hand, voice unsteady. "I was wrong," he admitted. "For years, I let hate blind me. But when my life was on the line, the man I had ignored didn't hesitate to save me. I want to be better. I want to do better." Some people nodded. Some were skeptical. But one thing was clear. Change was happening. Then he turned to Jake. "I sold my store," he continued, "donated the money to the youth program. It's time I start giving back." Jake took a deep breath. He didn't smile, but After a moment, he extended his hand. "I don't know if we'll ever be friends," he said, "but I respect a man who chooses to change." Dawson clasped his hand. "Thank you." And in that moment, an old grudge became something new, a lesson in humanity, in redemption, in change. Hate nearly cost Dawson everything, but kindness saved him. And in the end, it wasn't just a house that was rebuilt, it was a heart. If you believe kindness is stronger than hate, share this story. Because sometimes, the greatest rescues aren't from fire, they're from ourselves.